Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Hey. So I see a lot of faces, familiar faces out there. Some people I don't know. My name is Scott Walker, and I absolutely love tropical fruits, among other things. Just a quick background. When I was a young boy, I grew up in South Florida, and my mom would, the minute I woke up, I'd eat breakfast, and she'd be like, "Out of the house, go play." And so, South Florida back in the early to mid '70s was a cool time to be down there. And but we'd get hungry throughout the day, and so we would pillage all the neighborhood fruits, And so you'd find me sitting up with my friends at a mango tree, just eating mango with strings of mango coming down my face, and then of course the citrus trees. And then I'd be up in another tree eating star fruit, even though it was a little bitter back then. It was one of the varieties that was not quite as sweet. And then over in another tree in another area, eating these weird pods I found. I don't know what they were. I didn't know what they were at the time, but someone said I could eat them. And so I started eating them. And you break it open, little crackly pod, and tropical fruit. And well, it wasn't a fruit, it was a seed, but which is really a fruit. But and it had a real sticky inside. Hard shell, sticky inside, and you just ate around the seeds. And it was really kind of sweet, but kind of sour in a way.
Loquat.
No.
Tamarind.
Tamarind. It was tamarind. So I had all these things to gnaw on and chew on and eat, and then I'd come in for dinner and all that stuff. But that was my childhood down in South Florida, early to mid '70s. It was a lot of fun down there, and so that kind of got me hooked on certain tropical fruits. Fast forward after the hurricanes of Gene and Francis. Up here, I've been up here 30 years, and I thought we had a piece of property over on 50th Avenue, and my wife said, "Let's start replanting after the storms." I'm like, "Great," so I started putting in bromeliads and all these things, low maintenance because I'm a lazy gardener. So that's right about the time when citrus greening hit, and the canker was already there, and everything was going south with citrus, and I thought, oh man. So I put in a Meyer lemon and a Persian lime and a key lime, which tend to be a little hardier of the citrus varieties. And they worked well. I did lose, I think, a Persian lime, but they're pretty hardy. But then I met a couple guys, Lee and Alan. They were with the Rare Fruit Council of Indian River County. And man, a couple of characters, but boy, they knew their stuff. And my whole world began to open learning about these tropical fruits that we can grow right here that are like bulletproof, So I'm talking mangoes and carambola, star fruit trees. This one right here behind me. Does anybody know what this is? Sapodilla. Look at this little fruit on here coming up. This little fruit right here is actually one of my favorite trees. If you don't know of course, we're going to talk about the mangoes, and I'm going to talk about the avocados and the papayas and the basics, but you need to know about trees like this. This tree right here itself is pretty much windproof, it's drought-proof, it's flood-proof, and it has it looks gorgeous. Hardly any leaf drop, but it's a sapodilla. And this variety right here will put out a fruit, and it'll get to be about the size of what is that, like a goose egg, something like that? A large egg. And then you pick it off the tree, you scratch it to see if it's ready, pick it off the tree, sit it on the counter like you would an avocado, and you wait till it starts to get a little soft. And you cut it open, and it's the texture of a fine pear, but it tastes like it's been soaked in brown sugar and cinnamon. I kid you not. It's just one of those fruits that you eat and you're like, I can't believe this looks so hideous, but it's the most incredible. And you can only eat like one or a half of one. They're so delicious. And you can make all kinds of things with it, but who would have known? Sapodilla, I know they grow wild. They're called dilly trees down in the Everglades. Smaller varieties, some are edible, some are not. But so there's all this stuff that I just didn't know about. Miracle fruit, that's a crazy one there. We can talk about that a little bit later. A Barbados cherry. Has anybody heard of one called strawberry fruit? The strawberry fruit tree? The Latin name is Muntingia calbura. Is actually puts out a small little red berry or cherry, maybe the size of a small marble, but you eat them and they taste like cotton candy, like literally like cotton candy, super sweet, 97% sugar. So there's another one, and they actually have 3 or 4 of those trees right over there. They grow about 10 feet a year. They make a beautiful canopy tree. They live about 15 years, so you got to replace them, but it's a wonderful tree to have in your yard. So all these odd, weird fruits that no one really knows about are out there, in addition to all the ones that we do know about, the standards, So just by show of hands, how many people are currently growing tropical fruits of some kind? Quite a few. Wonderful. Okay, good. Of those hands that were up, how many people are growing mango? Oh, quite a few. Wow, okay. What are you guys doing here? No.
The little mangoes.
Little mangoes. Yes, they're
Very sweet.
so many kinds. Okay, so listen, mangoes have come a long way. If you go to the store and you get a mango, it's typically going to be a Tommy Atkins because they look pretty. They've got a beautiful blush, but the problem with those is that they use those because they have a lot of fiber in them, and that's okay. Some people enjoy the fiber, but typically they don't ripen properly because they've been picked at a certain time, maybe a little premature. And then the fiber content, some people don't like that. And so if that's all you're ever exposed to are those Tommy Atkin mangoes and perhaps the little champagne mangoes that wither up too quickly and get weird, you don't know what's out there. But there are so many fantastic varieties, even, starting back in probably the 30s and 40s in Florida, they started developing varieties of different mangoes. Walter Zill, from down south, their family's still doing this, produced some incredible varieties. One of my favorites right now that I have in my yard, I've had it for probably 15 years, is a Cogshall, Cogshall. If you don't have one and you have the space, it literally stays compact, no more than 10, 12 feet in its out years. It stays naturally small. So it's a good mango to have if you have a smaller yard or just want to get another mango in your, it was developed in Pine Island in the 40s, and it's a very pleasing mango, nice, sweet, no fiber. So there's some great varieties. Mangoes, and I'll talk a little bit about mangoes real quick. Mangoes are something you definitely want to manage and keep under control. There's no reason that a mango tree needs to be as big as this tree here. And I remember climbing them as a kid, this big. But anymore, with the varieties they have out now, like a Glen will get as a medium-sized tree. That's the #1 recommended, in my opinion, is a Glen, because it's relatively anthracnose-free, which means it's resistant to disease. Everybody likes a Glen. I've never seen anyone that doesn't like a Glen. Nice and sweet, and then it has zero fiber. So that's a really good aspect of a Glen mango. And then a few others I would recommend, and I'm going to be sticking around afterwards after we talk, and I'll answer any questions. I'll be here as long as I need to be if you have any very specific questions about varieties. But I want to tell you a cool story about mango varieties, because there's probably, I don't know, 5,000 to 10,000 varieties of mangoes all over the world, and we know of a few here. A lot of people think Hayden and Glen and Edward and Kent, all the standards, but we talked about Zill. Walter Zill was one of the original guys. I don't remember his son's name. Glenn, it was Glenn. But anyway, down south in Lake Worth, he's got a really unique way he does things to develop new mango varieties. Now, some of you may not know that if you plant a mango seed, like everybody loves to plant an avocado seed, and you can plant a mango seed, but I don't want to get too technical here, but there's two types of mango seeds. There's monoembryonic and polyembryonic. And those are just the two varieties. Most Southeast Asian mangoes, the real long, skinny ones, are going to be polyembryonic. What that means is, and I'm not going to get technical, but they have more likely of a chance to be true to seed when you plant it. So in other words, it's going to probably be like its parent plant. But all the other mangoes typically will revert back to the old turpentine mangoes, the ones that just are they don't taste good. They're good for rootstock, but every once in a while, when you plant a few of those mangoes out, you'll get one or two that are actually a new variety that actually meets or exceeds what the original one was. And so back to my story, the Zill down in West Palm Beach or Lake Worth area planted out 10,000 seedlings. And of those 10, my numbers might be off by 1,000, but 10,000 seedlings. Out of the 10,000, he had a knack or a capability where he could go around and smell the leaves and know if it had reverted back to the turpentine, the old original. But the ones that didn't, he kept, maybe about 1,100 of those, okay? And out of those, he let those raise up fruit, see how they were, and from those are coming this new variety of Florida Zill mangoes they'll knock your socks off. And I've had some in the past few years. One's called Orange Sherbet. And it's like, you can't imagine what you're eating when you're eating a mango. You're eating mango, and there's no fiber to it, but it tastes like a lemon or orange sherbet. There's a citrus overtone to it that just freaked me out when I ate it. I'm like, this can't be, because I'm so used to eating just regular sweet mangoes. Some are peachy, some are vanilla. He's got one called coconut cream. He's got one called peach cobbler. He's got one called pina colada. And then of course there's so I say all that to say, if you think you know mangoes, stick around. I mean, there's a lot being done on the mango front. And thank God we've not had any major freezes and no killer storms, but even if you get a storm though, you prop it up and they're good to go. But anyway, the mangoes are exciting. Yes, I'll take, by the way, I will take questions if they're kind of talking about exactly what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'm gonna stick around at the end for any questions you have. Yes, sir?
What grows here?
What grows here? As far as mangoes, any kind of mango grows here. All of them grow here. Now, I live in a cold pocket, which is off 58th Avenue. If you're riding a motorcycle and you go down the road, you know, if you've ever ridden a motorcycle at night or even have the windows down and you're going at night down the road and all of a sudden, ooh, it just got really cold in that area. I don't know, it might be the land dips or something, but I live in a really cold area. So to address your question, I'll grow any mango in the area. The closer to the beach side, the better. As you get inland where there's cold pockets, it's gonna get colder. So all you have to do is protect that mango when it's young from freezes. That's really the only thing we have. But it'll grow on sand, it'll grow on, you know, I've seen them grow everywhere. You can go along the ridge here and see them growing in sugar sand, producing. Downtown there's mangoes, out west there's mangoes, beachside there's mangoes. So any kind of mango really, they're all about the same. Real quickly, yeah.
Do you have any issue with anthracnose or powdery mildew?
I do. She asked if I have issues with anthracnose or powdery mildew. I do, especially on some varieties like ice cream. Ice cream is a phenomenal mango. It's a smaller one, but I rarely get fruit because I'm a lazy gardener. And it always seems to, if there's rain during the flowering season, it happens. Now, what you can do to prevent that is I try to be as natural as I can, but a copper fungicide spray right before those flowers have opened up. And so it's almost like a pre-treatment. So she's asking basically, when mangoes bloom sometimes, they'll get a powdery mildew and then the flowers will fall off and then they won't fruit. I had that with my carry this year actually. And so you can take a pump sprayer, copper fungicide, spray it carefully over before the flowers have opened up. So we're talking probably early winter, right when you see the panicles come out. But that's the best thing to do for those, and some varieties are more susceptible than others. Anthracnose, sometimes it just happens, especially if we get into a wet season. Sometimes anthracnose is those funky black spots you'll see in a mango, or tearing they call it, where it drips down. And but quite honestly, I'll still pick the mangoes and I'll cut them open, and some that are thick-skinned, it may hit the surface area, but it doesn't really affect the taste or flavor. I just cut that out and eat the whole thing. The only thing I don't eat after is squirrels and raccoons. So, yeah, so you had a question back there first.
Yes, you talked about protecting them from freezing. We're new to this area. What do you do? Put on a sheet?
That's a lecture I'm going to do in the fall, specifically on protecting tropical fruit trees. Please come back for that, because I have a document I wrote up about that, but I will talk to you after very specifically about that. But there are ways to protect tropical fruit trees that I do have, yes.
Copper what did
Oh,
you say?
copper fungicide. Copper fungicide, yes.
And is there any way to kind of deter the squirrels away from your mangoes?
Yes.
They do like
I can't talk about that here. We're in mixed company. Squirrels are, I'm going to take a sidetrack and talk about squirrels for a second, because we're talking about tropical fruits, all tropical fruits. Squirrels will destroy peaches. They'll destroy, I have beautiful lychee trees. I don't know if you know what a lychee tree is. And the squirrels decimated it in 2 days, gone, all my lychees last year. Okay, so there are a few things you can do that I've heard. So I've heard that you can take nylon stockings and put them over particular fruits, papayas or whatever, and the squirrels don't like to get their little nails caught in that. Yeah, that may or may not work. Some people have taken hardware cloth, which is that mesh wire stuff, and if you're desperate and you really want mangoes, then you kind of put them around. Maybe if you have some panicles of lychees or a fruit that you really, really want to get at least a dozen of them, you can take the time and do that. They have a hard time getting through that mesh. One thing I found, I had a particular tree early on when my Namdaka Mai which is a great fruit, great mango. It's a Southeast Asian mango, long and thin, tastes like peaches. But I'm like, I'm gonna get at least 12 of these things before the squirrels get them, because I live in an area where there's pine woods and squirrels are awful. And the squirrels will go up and they'll bite and drop a fruit before it's not even ready yet. It's green, which can be eaten green, and then it ruins them. So that's a whole nother topic, I think, a squirrel topic. But some people take 2-liter bottles, soda bottles. You cut it right down the side, open it up, put it around the mango or mangoes, and then put a little zip tie around it and just connect it to a branch, and they do not get past that. I guarantee they don't get past that. They don't. I tried it, and I did it for like 5 or 6 mangoes, and they leave that alone. So there are some people that what's the way they relocate squirrels to heaven.
Definitely.
You know,
I trap them and take them out by your place.
yeah, that's where they're coming from. Yeah, you know, I mean, if you have a neighbor or someone you don't like, you know, but you know, I'm not a big advocate of poisoning, because you don't know what other stray animals are going to come in, and I selectively have taken out a few myself, but I try to have enough fruit so that, and I have 17 varieties of mango in my yard, and I've got a lot of other trees, but I try to have enough variety of tropical fruit so that I'm going to get some of it, and you have to know that they're going to get some of it. There's a certain ratio, especially with mangoes. Nothing more frustrating than walking and seeing those pieces, half-eaten piece on the ground that's not even ready. So I try to plant things like sapodilla and strawberry fruit and mulberries and other things that they may or may not eat that might detract them, or maybe not that you want to attract them to your yard, but maybe during mango season, make a peanut station and just pour peanuts out there every day, way out somewhere away from the mango trees. So I'd love to say that I shoot all my mango or my squirrels, but I'm not going to say that out loud. But no, there are some. My daughter loves them. She's like, don't shoot those, don't kill them, and so I don't, and because they're fun when they play and they're good eating. Make like a mango salsa right on top of that squirrel. So listen, mango trees, you got to get a hold of and manage these trees. Same with any tropical fruit tree. I'm gonna jump from squirrels. I'm still on mangoes here, but take control, have dominion over your trees. And what I mean by that is this. Here's a little mango tree right here. Well, yeah, if a mango tree has not started branching, can everybody see that? See where this mango tree is branching? Right here. These are going to be, if you look back at this oak tree, there's your main structural things, and it starts about 5 feet off the ground. That's what this is going to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5. You could cut that out. That's going to be your basis for your tree. If you have a mango tree that's this tall and hasn't started branching yet, you put it in the ground, or if it's in the ground, you take your snippers and you snip it. And you create this structure to happen lower to the ground. Because if it's way up there, I just prefer them to be smaller, because if you want the tree to be compact and produce, stick with me, then you start it small, right? So this mango tree here, I will allow this tree to branch out. Each one of these is my main structures. And if it gets to be about 15 inches and it hasn't branched again, snip, I'll cut it. And what that'll do is that'll produce another set of 3 or 4, save 3 or 4 of those branches, and they'll come out and create another. And then when those get about 15 inches, snip if it hasn't started branching. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna create this small compact tree with more tips. Because what do the tips do? They produce fruit, right? So you're gonna have, and so that's how I do it. And all my trees start in my yard. They start branching about here, they come up and then they branch again, and then I've got these nice compact trees. Every summer, after the mangoes have fruited, I go in and I take out, I open up the canopy a bit, I get some airflow, I cut the tips back by maybe a foot all the way around, and really manage and control that. Now some trees will stay managed a lot easier. The smaller ones like Coggeshall or Namdok Mai, there's a lot of other varieties. Carey stays small. Glen stays relatively, but ones like Valencia Pride that just want to go and shoot, and some of the new varieties, you've really got to work on keeping those back, Because if you've got this massive mango tree with only a few random stray things, you're not going to get as much fruit, and it's going to be way up in the air. So, and if you've already started and you already have a mango tree that's kind of sparse and out, don't be afraid to knock a branch back, because it will start to come out there, and you can reset that tree basically. So with any tropical fruit tree, you want to manage it, keep it smaller, because otherwise you're feeding squirrels way up there, and it's really hard to reach, and then it becomes could become a hazard if it's too big and falls in your house or whatever. So manage your trees, okay? So let me jump real quick to star fruit, carambola. When I was growing up, this is a great fruit tree to have. It can grow in shade. I've seen it grow not in water, but in moist soil. It can grow in dry soil. It's a beautiful tree, has a slight leaf drop at certain times, but it's really pretty. And then the star fruit can be used in so many ways. There are some varieties that are more tart, and they're good in salads, crunchy. They're knock your socks off antioxidant-wise. Lots of fruit in it, lots of vitamins and minerals. So it's a really good fruit to eat. And there are varieties that are very sweet. I have a variety called Sri Kembagan. It's 2 words, SRIKEMBENGAN, I think. And it's a great blend of everything. It's a little tart, it's a little sweet, it's crunchy, and it's got a good floral aroma to it. And my wife has made upside down carambola cakes, and you can put them in salads, and you can eat them right out of hand. You can juice them. It's a really well-producing fruit for this area. And so I definitely, if you have an area, and you can keep those small. I keep mine about 12, 15 feet. Kind of comes up and branches out like an umbrella. I can walk underneath it and look and see what's going on. That's another great tree, star fruit. And again, they grow in shade. They'll grow in this area right here under all this canopy here. And so, and they'll grow in full sun, but they seem to prefer shade in a way. I have one right underneath my elm, and it's produced insanely this year. Yes? Absolutely. Yeah, and in fact, so 2 years ago I got into bonsai, which is really fascinating. You know, it's like I'm always into something new. And but learning about that really made me reflect back on how I did my trees when I started training them. I'm like, hey, I did a pretty good job, because now my starfruit tree that I started training early has these gorgeous, neat looking lower structure that I started early. And then it branches out. And so yes, any tropical fruit tree, even my sapodilla I started that early, but it kind of naturally did its own thing, but I do top it at least, you know. So most you can do. So she asked if you could train those like you would a mango. Absolutely, yes.
And when is the best time to do your pruning?
Well, with mangoes, mangoes and lychees and longans, after they fruited, like within that short time frame, after they fruited. That's a good question. Is anybody growing a lychee, however you want to say it? A few people. The lychee or lychee, you know, I asked this because I talked to a few people from China actually, and depending on the region they were from, some said lychee, some said lychee. So a lot of people used to say lychee nut, you know, but I don't know where that came from, but I think it's dried. It's an Asian fruit, Southeast Asian fruit, and it's red. How long does it take? A lychee tree is strange in that it gets in the ground and it seems to do kind of nothing for about 3 years, and then it gets a little bigger and does nothing for 3 years, and then about the 5 to 7 year mark, somewhere around there, it starts fruiting. And sometimes those fruits will just drop off. And you're like, but then another year, but the longer it gets, I would say you have to wait about 6, 7 years before they really start fruiting well. And I have a Brewster, which is a great variety. I have a Mauritius and a Sweetheart, and they're all really good varieties. And so you can't go wrong with any variety. But they do take a while to get established for some reason. I don't know if it depends on the soil. I have some in different areas of my yard. And but lychee is another one of these strange ones that if you want to try, other than mangoes and whatever, lychee is a great tree to try out. It's a wonderful tasting fruit. But I would suggest trying them first. Maybe run down to Stewart or Fort Pierce. Nelson's in Fort Pierce has them usually during the season. You can go buy the produce there. I mean, not the tree, but the actual fruit, and try it. See if you like it, you know. Both, yes. I mean, both. A little of both is fine. They seem to better in the sun, you know. So, so mango, carambola, avocado. How many people growing avocado? Great. How many people having trouble with avocado? A few here and there. Yeah, and I'll address specific questions about your troubles after. avocados are great to grow. I lost mine, all 3 of mine, to that little stupid beetle that that came in on a pallet from China into the Carolinas, and it destroyed all the red bay trees from here to Melbourne or Titusville. You could go down I-95 a few years back and just see dead, dead, dead. That same family as the avocado. For some reason, my yard got hit. I lost my Monroe, my Lula, and my Brogdon. I lost those avocados. So I'm not saying I'm not going to put them in again. I will. Avocado is fantastic to have in your yard. But just know that there's certain things that are a little picky to grow in certain yards. The most common problem I see is overwatering. They need high and dry. They need a lot of well-drained soil. And if you overwater them, they will die back. They'll get root rot and die back. So make sure if you do have an avocado planted, it's in an area that can drain well, and just be careful with your watering, especially if you have sprinkler systems or things. But listen, the biggest thing that I had trouble with beyond the death of my trees was cold tolerance. There are some varieties now that are fantastic for cold tolerance avocado-wise. You want to plant a winter Mexican. Now I'm seeing a Florida Haas out there. I don't know much about that, but I'm assuming that it can do well. I do know that a Choquette, Choquette, a Lula, and a Monroe are 3 fantastic mangoes that you can grow in Florida that have a cold tolerance down into the 20s, which is very important because we get a freeze here. Everybody's going to be like, what the heck happened to all my tropical fruit trees? It can hit hard, and we haven't had one for a while. And so, but in the fall, I will talk about protecting them. So those are good varieties. I always look for cold protection when it comes to cold tolerance on avocados, and I also look for oil content. And the Lula, Monroe, and Choquette have a good oil content, because I've had some Florida mangoes that are kind of watery. They're not quite as good as that rich, oily Haas, but those are 3 good varieties. If you don't have a pineapple or 12 in your yard, plant a pineapple. It's the easiest thing. I usually start my lectures talking about get a pineapple in your yard. I have pineapples everywhere. I use them as landscaping. You go to the store, you eat a pineapple, you buy one here, they're going to fruit quicker. But I always go to the store and I take pineapples, and just a real quick on how to do pineapples. A lot of people cut the top and then try to plant the top, and they're like, why did it rot, or why are the leaves falling out, or this and that. Here's what you do. From all the Florida people here that know how to ring a lobster, you take the pineapple under one hand, take a towel, put it around, and you wring the top off. You just wring it off, twist it off. And I wish I would have had one to do for you today, but you wring the top off, it comes right out, little teeny core, and then you take it and you peel back several of those lower leaves. And you just kind of peel them off. And you'll see these little weird little flat things that look like kind of flat worms. Those are the roots, okay? Don't touch those. Just peel off a couple of those bottom sections of leaves, and then set the thing on your counter for a week and let it dry out. It's a bromeliad. They can survive anything typically, but they can't survive wetness or too much moisture, because they're really susceptible to rot, as are bromeliads. So let it dry on your counter, and then go stick it in the dirt in your yard, or put it in a pot and then let it go. And then the minute you see on that little pot, it only takes like a month or so, the minute you see the little roots coming out the bottom of that pot, pop it in the yard. Easiest way to do it. Most failures I see with people trying to get pineapples going are the rot, and that you want to dry that thing out before you actually plant it. So that's a really great thing to do. And you can do I've seen people do rows of pineapples and do them as landscaping with some other bromeliads. They're gorgeous and they produce great. Some of them, some are smaller, the little cannonball, the ones you'll get, but eventually the more you get going and the more slips they put out, the pups, those will fruit larger. And it's fun just to walk around the yard in the spring. My wife do this and look out down each one and see, oh, there's one coming up, Yes.
Once they fruit, and
Yes.
it's a fruit, can leave that plant in?
You can leave that plant in, yeah, and typically it's gonna put out other pups from around the edges, and you can either take those pups and pop them off when they get to be 1/3 of the size of the mother plant. When they get to be that big, you can pop them off and just stick them in the dirt, and they'll grow. Now that mother plant won't produce anymore, but it's going to produce a lot of offspring that will produce. And typically they say, I've not noticed this in my yard, but they say that those offspring will produce quicker than the crown had done. And so, has anybody had any experience with that? Okay, yeah, so that's the way to do it. So, man, there's nothing like, okay, so then we're back to rodents. I have a lot of pineapples, but the simple thing is when that thing starts looking yellowish green, I made this chicken wire cage, and it was easy. It took me an hour to make it, and I take it and I just go put it on top of that little tent. I put some tent stakes down in the ground, and I know that nothing's getting that. I will eat that. It won't. These raccoons and possums. So you got a dominion, guys. So take control. So mangoes, pineapples, carambola. A lot of people ask about papaya. You can grow papaya here. I've grown it from seed, from stuff from Sam's. There's some good varieties like the Red Lady, which fruits at about, 5 feet, stays smaller. The biggest battle with those things, with papaya, are the little worms that you get, the extra protein that's in the papaya. But there's several ways around that. If you really like to eat papaya, sometimes you can eat them green and make papaya like a Thai papaya salad. You grate it green, it's unbelievable. But for those that want to let it get nice and yummy and ripe and sweet, a stocking will work. When the papayas are small, you put a hose stocking. Is that what they call them? Stockings? Hose? Pantyhose, that's it. Right. Strange words, but you put those on there, and what that does is it prevents that particular wasp from coming in and laying its eggs in that, which are what produces those little worms. So put the stocking on there, and 9 times out of 10, from my experience, it prevented those worms from coming in. So papayas are great to grow. Let me just look around and just do a quick inventory. There's so many good varieties of mango here. I just want to take everything home. Oh, mangoes, guys. By the way, real quick, with mangoes, with avocados, even with lychees and some other tropical fruits, extend your season. What I mean by that is a Pickering mango, which is a fantastic mango, or a Rosa-Gold, Pickering or Rosa-Gold, fantastic mangoes. They will fruit as early as May. Okay? Stay with me. My kit mango, I can have on the table at Thanksgiving. So when you're looking for your mangoes, and if you can put more than one in, I have a book somewhere. I don't know if it's in this book or not. Maybe not. You might have to go to, sometimes there's like Pine Island Nursery has like a mango viewer, and other places online can tell you when the mango will produce. There are early season mangoes and avocados. There are mid-season mangoes and late season. So instead of having all of your mangoes come up in June, you could actually have mangoes from May almost into September, October, November. Okay, so if you are going to plant more mangoes, or hey, I'd like to put one more mango in the yard, think about and find out when it's going to fruit, because it's nice to extend your season so you can have mangoes all summer long. Yes?
The University of Florida site has all the different versions, and when
They do.
what their resistances,
Yes.
and what their seasons are. And all.
Is that the EDIS site, EDIS?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, University of Florida, they put out fantastic things. Among all their blueberry cultivars, which are excellent for around here, and that's more subtropical, but gosh, they have a great website. She was saying University of Florida, but if you just type it in Google or type in EDIS, E-D-I-S, I think it is on the back of my brochure, that will give you a lot of good information. Yes, sir?
I've got it.
You got it? Okay, great. So so that's a really good site to look at. So yeah, you want to extend your seasons, have a longer variety of fruit seasons. Sapodilla, let me just look at a couple quick things here. What's that?
Guava.
Guava.
Yeah. What happened to our guavas? We were
Okay,
raised with
again, I was raised in South Florida,
Right.
and my grandmother would make guava jam and guava jelly. These little small yellow guavas, and they would grow wild everywhere. I tried to grow the, it's called Mexican cream or something guava, and it just didn't do well on my yard. I might have had it in the wrong spot. But guavas, I think what I'd love to find, and guavas are great to grow, but I think you almost would want to go back to and try to find that old variety, that little yellow small guava that really is very pungent, tastes great, and makes the best jams and jellies. Guavas are great to grow. You're going to battle fruit flies, just like you would with like Suriname cherries or those types of things. But guavas are definitely something to try to put in your yard, and you can eat them out of hand. They're kind of seedy, but they do make great jams and jellies. So that's another fantastic treat. And then keep that small tree like a bush. Let's do like a left to right, introduce yourself thing. Bananas. Oh, let me start with bananas real quick. Hold on. Okay, bananas. put them in your yard. My yard, so my father-in-law can grow bananas like nobody's business. He's got this mucky section of his yard, and he ribs me about it because I'll put bananas in my yard, and on my property, which used to be, I think it was like a cattle field, and it was like a pond that where I live, the ground, they just don't, they'll grow and they look kind of cool, but they never produce, or I'll hit a freeze. So some areas are better than others for bananas, but there are some great varieties. The manzana or manzano apple, the apple banana. Ice cream banana is another really good variety. Stick a banana or two in the yard, you'll be surprised. But I will tell you about bananas, they're heavy feeders. I don't really fertilize much. Maybe sometimes when my trees are getting going, I'll put fertilizer down. But bananas, you can put compost and leaves and stuff on them, and you can literally fertilize them every month. And sometimes I think that's what it takes. I'm a lazy gardener. I like mangoes and the things that you don't have to worry about. But sometimes with the bananas, the things I can tell you is that they're heavy feeders. And if you want to really get them to produce, you've got to really feed them heavily. 666, whatever it can be. It can be organic, chemical, whatever you want to do. However you do it, however you compost, worm castings or whatever. So we've got
How do they grow?
bananas. Some stay smaller, but I mean, some can be, well, not quite as, I don't know. They get to be about maybe 12, 15 feet, I would say, What do we have here?
On bananas,
Yeah.
feet, did you say they were okay with my feet?
Yeah, what I've seen, yes. My father-in-law grows them on mucky soil. And then also with the bananas, one real quick note about the bananas, they say that when you take the pups out, like say I want to give someone a pup, I don't know, I've not done this, but I've heard this, so I just want to pass it along. They say that the pups that come out where the leaves are rounded at the tip won't produce as well as the ones that are pointed at the tip. Maybe a banana expert can verify that. I'm just not, I love bananas, but they don't do well in my yard, so I gave up on them for a little bit. So, but it is a good thing to try and grow. My father-in-law, he just kills me with that. Yes? But they just suck up water. They're like it's like a herb almost, so they can take a lot of water. They really can. Yeah. You can. I mean, I just be careful. But I would say once a month would be better. But they'll grow and produce. They should. Sometimes it takes a couple years. Back here, more of a subtropical, but I love a good mulberry. And mulberries, there's a couple kinds that you'll find here. One is the everbearing, which is a smaller little bush, smaller leaves, tiny little mulberries. And they're pretty good. They're sweet. Some are a little spicy. But these larger leaf varieties like this might be a Thais or an East Coast or a Pakistan. These produce nice, long, size of my pinky mulberries that are really tasty. One of my friends sent a picture, and she's like, look at my hands, and they were completely colored, like completely blue or purple, whatever it was, because she was picking mulberries to make like jam and stuff. So that's a good one to grow. It's not really tropical, but it's a nice one. It's a good deterrent fruit, for squirrels and such. What kind do we have here? Jackfruit, great variety, neat tree. Has anybody ever had jackfruit before? A few people. It's the largest tree-borne fruit. It's giant. They're like 50, 60-pound fruit. And you cut them up. You've got to use gloves and oil because there's like latex on them. And it's just a messy process. But it's like a real crunchy little fruit. The arils inside, which the arils are the flesh around the seeds. They're crunchy. And they taste kind of like juicy fruit gum. That's sort of the best way to describe it. And some are sweeter, some have complex flavors, but it's one of those trees where first get mangoes in, then maybe starfruit or avocado and a few things, but that's a neat tree to plant. I've got one right now that's finally fruiting, so in my yard. Sapodilla, I love this tree. It's underrated. People, I wish I would have had some for you to taste, but again, maybe you can, there's a place down in Homestead, Florida City, actually. Everybody know where Florida City is? Down on the way to the Keys. Okay, you might want to write this down for trying fruits. The place is called Robert is Here. Robert is Here. Some people, if you know it, you know it. We stop there every time we're going into the Keys and every time we're coming out of the Keys. And they do these tropical fruit milkshakes, but they have they always have tropical fruits available to try. They'll give you pieces of it. Where was I going with that? Oh, So my wife's favorite fruit is a canistel. Does anybody know what a canistel is? Like one person. Okay, canistel, it's about this big. It's a large. Some are smaller, some are big. It's shaped like a top, okay, and it's yellow. All right, but when it gets ripe, you sit on the counter, pick it. When it's yellow, sit on the counter. When it gets ripe, it gets sort of, I don't know, it's sort of soft, but you can take it and just sort of, it's a thin skin, so you just kind of break it apart, and the texture of it is the texture of a hard-boiled egg yolk. That's the texture, cheesecake. But it tastes like pumpkin pie and cheesecake mixed together. This is crazy. Like, again, all these tropical, like, what? You know, but back in the 50s and 60s, you'd make milkshakes out of them, pies, canistel pie out of them. They're fantastic. But back to my story, trying things like canistel or sapodilla or lychee or jocote or all these weird things, Robert is here. We'll ship them to you. Like, I bought them, and I think I did it with PayPal, and I just type in what's available. They'll show what's available, and there's a nominal fee for shipping, like, I don't know, $10 shipping fee. But anybody got a squirrel? And so that's a good way to try things. I know they are cute. I know. But that's the best way. Hey, I'd love to try some longans, you know. If you can't find anything locally, they'll ship them to you. And so it's a you know, but that's a good way to try things. Try sapodilla, you know, try these different things. Try jackfruit. They're delicious. Here's a nice one here it's more subtropical. A loquat is a good tree to have in the yard after we've had a devastating freeze. Like, you know, some of them, like mulberries and loquats, you know, after we get a freeze and half of your mangoes are burned back, like, the loquats are like, look at me, I'm fine, you know. And so they take wind, they take drought, they produce a good fruit that's good out of hand. It's a Japanese plum, it's called a loquat. It's not related to kumquats, which are citrus. But loquats, you know, it depends on the property that you have and how much, but that's a decent fruit to have in your yard that's gonna be there, and it's not gonna get destroyed by cold or anything like that. So that's a nice one to have. For loquat, sun, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Get it in the ground. You know, I've had loquats fruit at like no bigger than this. You know, I've had loquats fruit very small, especially if it's a grafted variety, which is something I would like to touch on real quick. Guys, when you're planting your trees, but we'll talk about that, where to put that after. When you put a tree in, you know, citrus, mango, avocado. Here, I'm gonna show you something. So look at this little guy. Trying so hard to reproduce. Look at him. Namdok Mai, my favorite mango. But what this little tree is it's about a 2 to 3 year old rootstock, and it was grafted. This is how they do grafting, just to, maybe some of you don't know. Say we have a tree that's producing. Here's a big giant mango tree, and we want to create we want to do a grafted variety. So we grow up some seedling rootstock. So you got this little small 2-year-old mango tree, or even smaller. You go over to the mango tree and you snip off what's called a scion, S-C-I-O-N, the tip of the tree that you want it to be. And then you take it and you graft it onto, you cut this one off and you graft them together. And that makes a new tree. That's how all these grafted mango trees come to be, okay? But this little thing here, the top part of this, doesn't know it's tiny and it's only been in the ground for a month, and it can't possibly support, and it thinks it can, but it doesn't know that it's not even on this. So my recommendation, much to people's dismay, is for the first, you know, year or two, just pop these things off and just get rid of them. It can't hold those. It's going to set your trees back, and what it needs to do for the first 2 or 3 years is get its roots down and establish in the yard. It needs to, all the vigor from that tree has to go into the yard and getting established and getting that whatever it has going, all the mycorrhizae, fungi, and all the proper stuff and nutrition that's happening. And when that thing's finally grounded, maybe the 4th year, then you can let some fruit. And it'll know, it'll sometimes drop what it can't hold, And the trees know. And even during a certain time, some trees just drop fruit, who knows why. But don't ever let a tiny tree fruit like this. Even if it was a little bit bigger, I still would probably pop them off. You know, that's probably because I have other mangoes, but still, you want these trees to become really established before you allow them to fruit, whether it's citrus or anything like that. Yes?
Mangoes from seed?
Yeah, great. Mangoes from seed are worth a shot if it's a polyembryonic mango, which is typically going to be more likely true to seed. However, anything from seed, avocados, mangoes are going to take probably 10 years before they actually finally fruit. And then you're not sure if it's going to be the same variety. But if you have a lot of property, like I'm friends with a guy, good friend of mine, his name is Grant Gilmore. He's a scientist, he's been in the papers. He used to be with Harbor Branch on the Discovery Channel. He's a marine scientist, marine biologist, but his passion is mangoes. And he has several mangoes, one is phenomenal, named after his wife, Marilyn. And that's one that he took exactly what you're saying, grew one, took a risk from seed, and it just happened to be, like Gary Zill's, an amazing new variety. And it's kind of a blend of a Edward and a Kent, I think, and it's just unbelievable. But if you really definitely want fruit, I'd go with grafted. But you can try if you just want to give it a shot and try it out, you know. So she was basically asking if you can grow them from seed, and I certainly try it if you want, you know. So I want to talk about planting. When you do plant any of these trees here, I'll just kind of go through my list. Don't amend the soil. Up north, I think sometimes people amend the soil. They put other things in with it, and don't do that. Here's why. What you want to do, because if you amend the soil, well, it's not even soil, we have just sand basically here in Florida, right? So if you amend it, you create this nice little happy pocket of nutrition, and the roots don't ever have to go anywhere. They just stay, and they'll just weave around and go in circles sometimes. I always take my trees, when I plant them, I take them out of the thing. I've got a hole dug probably, 1.5 or 2 times bigger than the actual root ball. I'll take it out of the pot here, shake it out a little bit, just gently get the roots out, take some of that soil, put it away, and then I will put it into the hole, okay? I'll water the hole first, put it in there, and make sure that the crown, which is the crown of the tree, right here, right where the roots begin, you want to make sure that is above the soil, because you're going to get settling, and you don't want that crown below the soil line, your basic soil. So you want the crown above a little bit. So I'll put that in. I've got my hose. I water it in, and then I'll pull some dirt from whatever I've dug out from the yard, put a little bit of that in, water that again, get all the air pockets out, water that again, and then that's how I do it, basically. And then keep it cleanly cultivated a good ways around that. And so that's step one. Only to have the moles come and dig it all up. But anyway, so that's how I plant. Then I go and I get this stuff right here. Magic. This is called pine fines. For years I used cypress mulch, and people talk about oh, it does this to you. Well, not really. They use it. It's the scraps from lumber and stuff. But the reason I stopped using it, the cypress, is because it would create this impenetrable mat. And we have a real long dry spell, and I'd go to water, and it would just kind of resist and roll off that, and then it was bone dry underneath after a heavy rain. So I found that these pine fines put just a perfect amount of acidity in the soil. They allow percolation from water through this. It's a nice, loose, friable mulch. I put it on thick when I put a tree down. I put about 5-6 inches down around that, keeping it away from the actual trunk, but put it around that, and just so that there's no other grasses or weeds competing. And then I'll replenish it when need be. But what happens is there's this really interesting thing they're finding out with microbiology in plants, that you want to feed the soil and not necessarily the tree. So I don't really use much fertilizer, but what I try to do is make it so that the environment that the tree is in is natural and gets this natural, vigorous thing going. There's basically, I need to learn more about the science of this so I can tell you exactly what's happening, but I know there's a fungus. Sometimes if you pull back mulch and stuff, you'll find this white fungusy stuff. That is critical. That allows the uptake of all the nutrients to that plant. So you get this thing going, it's this process where the fungus works with this, and that helps with the uptake of certain minerals and chemicals. And so I always heavily mulch my tropical fruit trees. And I start with this, and I'll use stuff from the yard too, just clippings or whatever. But I always like to create a nice, healthy bed so that the soil and the earthworms come up and they get all this thing going. This whole process happens that really affects the way the tree pulls in its nutrients and has the sugars going up and down and what it gets from the soil. Because we all know that even you can fertilize a tree till kingdom come with fertilizer, but things like your acidity of the soil, if that's not right, it'll never uptake into the tree. So and you can always go get a soil test kit. And I think, is there anybody here with the local extension office? But you can go to the agricultural extension office or whatever they call it here in town, take them a sample of soil, and they'll test it for you and tell you where it is on the acidity level. And that's a really good thing to know, because sometimes you might need to put a little lime down or go the other way depending on where it is. But without the proper acidity, and I remember them talking about pineapples with this, you can feed it till all day long, but it's not going to take it up if the soil acidity is not right, okay? So that's another kind of technical thing. So if you're having a plant falter or not quite grow in a certain area of the yard, maybe it does better up on the fill that they put your house on, or vice versa, you know? So it's kind of a hit and miss thing. In my yard, if I put a tree in and it's not thriving, I'll give it a couple years, I'll pick it up and I'll move it. I'll put it somewhere else, you know? Again, I'm kind of a lazy gardener. I don't like to have to maintain stuff and baby things along. So that's kind of what I do, you know? So yes.
Are they all self-pollinating, or do you have to have two?
Good question. She asked if they're self-pollinating. First of all, mangoes are pretty much self-pollinating. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Avocados, there's one variety called a Brogdon that has both A and B flower. So it is self-pollinating. But other ones are usually A or B, but you'll still get production on it. Like, yeah, because typically there will be bugs or whatever that sort of stick around over a couple days, and that'll create that. Plus, if you have a tree, if you have another avocado tree within about 1.5 miles or 2, which is a pretty broad area, then you'll get cross-pollination. That's because bees and things pollinate that. So,
have you ever heard of a Marcus pumpkin avocado? My neighbor
yes, I have.
planted one from the seed.
Yeah.
It hasn't done nothing. It's only been 4 years, but it's a beautiful tree.
It may take a while, yeah. She asked if there's something called a Marcus pumpkin avocado. That's an old variety. I'd be curious to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But from seed, it's going to take longer. Typically with an avocado seed or any tree, like it's going to want to shoot straight up. So a seedling tree wants to go straight up. I usually top those out to really encourage that lateral growth, you know. So quickly, what's that? Yeah.
Someone told me that if you get a cut from it and you get you don't have to worry about getting another avocado because it's already. I guess what I'm saying is
Like
that
a grafted variety?
Yeah, a grafted variety.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be pollinated.
Yeah, I mean, they do have, some do have one particular flower, but they always seem to, I've never known a full avocado, you know, like a mature avocado tree not to produce. So I don't know if it's cross-pollination or whatever, but it's, that does sound vaguely familiar though, it does. Barbados cherry, another great one right here. This thing here, yeah, Barbados cherry, fantastic little tree, creates either a small tree or a bush, puts out literally a cherry about the size of a quarter during the rainy season. Very tart, but I think they say one of these fruits is the same vitamin C level as 20 oranges. So you pop that in, and there's little seeds in it, and they grow readily from seed. You can grow them from seed. It's a fun little tree, Barbados cherry. One thing, 3 seeds?
3 seed pot.
3 seeds. So the 3 seeds in there, plant them all, right?
About a 15-footer in my yard.
Do you really? Okay, now I had one in my yard that didn't do very well. And I wondered why, and I thought, I'm gonna move this thing, put it in a different spot, because I've seen them do fantastic around here. What's wrong with my yard? Pulled it up, and sure enough, I had root knot nematodes. So tomatoes, ever-bearing mulberries, and these guys right here struggle sometimes in certain sandy soils with root knot nematodes. So if you have, all I can say is if you have one of these trees and it's not quite doing as well as you want it to, either move it into a more organic, rich soil in your yard or mulch heavily, like a fig, susceptible to root knot nematode down here. So some people plant them by patios so their roots can go under the patio where it's not affected. So root knot nematodes do not like heavy, thick, dense organic soil. And so I plant heavy mulch or even patio stones on top of these particular trees in my yard because I have some real sandy soil up by a certain area. So just know that if there's a susceptibility to those root knot nematodes, mulch heavily, thick, deep, organic, get it rich, get it going, get the earthworms coming in, and that'll change the type of soil that's underneath there. So again, you want to feed the soil to the certain trees. Strawberry tree, I love these things. This is just the coolest little tree. Again, this is the one that, there's already some on here. Look at that. I'd let these fruit though. But this tree right here is that Muntingia calbura. It produces a neat canopy tree and just hundreds and hundreds. You can't keep up with that. These little cherries that taste like cotton candy. They're delicious. They're so good. Miracle fruit, it's more of a novelty. Anybody know what a miracle fruit is? A couple people? Yeah, it's this little thing right here. It would actually be fun just to kind of put this in a yard and just have it just instead of a arboricola, put this in around your walkway. And then you see these little berries here, little small fruits. You put them in your mouth and you chew them up for a little bit. So it's not a drug, that's okay. So, but and what it does, and you roll them around your mouth for about a minute or two, and then you spit the seed out, and it changes, there's some glyco-something receptors on your tongue. And so then after you do that, for about 2.5 hours after, you can drink straight, you can eat a lemon out of hand. Wow. And it's the sweetest lemon you'll ever imagine. Crazy, bizarre. It's really strange. Yeah.
If you know anybody that's undergoing any medical treatment,
yes,
especially chemo, get that fruit.
Yeah, this will allow, he was just saying if there's someone that you know that's going through any kind of chemo or having a problem with appetite, hunger, they actually take a derivative of this called miraculin. It's a powder form. The FDA is battling everybody on this thing, but and it allows you to eat things that may be otherwise metallic tasting to you or whatever things that chemicals do. But it's really a neat plant. I mean, look, we got this. Put it in your yard, whatever. It's like, what, $20 or something, you know? So, or maybe it's more than that, but they probably won't eat it or else that'd be funny to watch. But yeah, it's really strange. David Fairchild discovered these down in Panama back in the, I don't know, maybe it was the 50s, 40s. And one of the locals said, here, put this in your mouth and try it, and then gave him some limes. And it just blew his mind. It's the sweetest, it's like drinking the sweetest limeade or lemonade you could ever possibly imagine. And then it goes away, but then you walk in circles for 2 days. So, no, I'm just kidding. There's no other side effects, but it's a novelty, you know. So again, just real quickly, plant stuff, get stuff in the ground. There's no better time than today to start. Make sure that you take control of that tree. You graft it properly. Not graft it. You prune it properly, structure it properly. Even if it's already big on you, you can prune back some stuff, no more than 20% of the whole canopy at one time. Try a couple of varieties, extend your seasons of your fruit. There's so much to talk about. In the fall, I did tell Tina Nelson that I'd like to do one on protecting your trees, because we had nights in the mid to low 20s in my yard years back, and my trees survived with what I did. So we'll talk about that in the fall, but I'm going to stick around. forever to answer. Yes, real quick.
Before you finish,
Yes.
can you make a comment or two on oranges and grapefruits?
Absolutely. People are still planting them. They're doing well. My navel orange did very well this year. My grapefruit, I must be in the wrong place. It's sitting in the same spot, and it hasn't even budged in 3 years. It's the same. It's not even growing. I think it knows that I don't like. I mean, I love citrus, but I don't know. So I need to move that. But I would say with citrus, great question, because people are still growing citrus. They're needy, and you really can't like develop the soil for citrus like you can with other fruit trees. You want to feed them, so you want to keep them cleanly cultivated, no weeds, no mulch at all, because they're susceptible to rot, to root rot. But I would feed them, I think it's once every 6 weeks. So you want to definitely feed them an organic or non-organic, whatever you choose, whatever side you're on with that. But they definitely need fed every 6 weeks. And then you stop around October, I think, and then you pick it back up in January.
Could you put stones around them to
I wouldn't, and
dirt?
just dirt, yeah. Try to keep it nice and clean, cultivate it. But you know, there's so many good varieties. The Temple Orange, I love the story of the Temple Orange. The guy that actually cultivated the Temple Orange, which is amazing, kind of it's got a spice to it. It's delicious. But we wouldn't have them today if the guy, I can't remember his name, but I have this old document written on a typewriter, a story that he was up wherever it was in the central Florida, and he protected the one tree through a massive freeze. He got a military tent and put it over the tree and had a fire going inside and a stove and protected that tree. And that's why we have Temple Oranges today. So, you know, fight the battle. We may have storms, we may have floods, we may have droughts, we may have freezes, but good grief, what a great place to live. You know, what a neat thing to do. Yeah.
In the 1980s, I lived in Sarasota.
Yeah.
I grew a grapefruit tree from seed. Moved to Chattanooga.
Yeah.
The grapefruit tree stayed in a large pot. Every winter it came inside, and as soon as it warmed up, it went out.
Yes, yes.
Now I'm here, and it's in my yard.
Is it really?
So,
Don't go away, I got a drawing real quick.
how would it ever produce fruit if I grafted or?
Let's talk about that after. I got a couple answers for you on that one. Okay, if anybody,
I have a real quick question.
real quick, yeah.
What color is the ripe sapodilla?
This same color, never changes. This scurfy gray color.
How do you know it's ripe?
You take your fingernail and scratch it. If it's green when you scratch it, it's not. If it's brown, it's ready to pick. And then it ripens on your counter. Yep, yeah. Yeah,
Did you say how big your property is?
half an acre. Half an acre. I'm all about planting tight. I'm honestly, you know, I have trees that I keep small, and I put them 9-10 feet apart, you know, and then I still have a big area that my wife wouldn't let me touch for the kids to play in, you know. So, but now I took the swing set down because they're now in college, and so I'm starting to encroach a little bit, you know. So.